They gave me the post-lunch, everyone's getting sleepy slot. So I'm going to set a timer, and we'll jump into this. I'll try to move quick. So I introduced myself briefly 30 minutes ago. My name's Aaron, worship pastor in Atlanta. My wife and I got married right out of graduation from college, 2 weeks after. About a year later than that, we started having kids, and we had kids for a long time. Now we have 4 boys, 2 in high school, 2 in elementary school. And we moved from South Carolina to Atlanta because we wanted what a pastor had. We wanted to be discipled. And so we moved to Atlanta to be a part of Grace Fellowship Church 17 years ago. And Buddy Hoffman was the pastor who started our church, and there was something in him that I wanted. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, and we'll talk a little about community, a little about training. But before we get into any of that, I want us to try a little math exercise. Now, musicians, I know, I'm on thin ice. But what we're going to do, I'm going to put a series of numbers up on the screen, and we're going to just go line by line and add them together and give the sum out loud. Okay, so don't put it up just yet, but the first number will be 1,000. And so we'll say 1,000. And then the next one's going to say 40. So we'll add them together and go 1,040. And then we'll keep summing line by line until we get to the bottom. Y'all ready? I need you to participate. You're going to fall asleep if you just sit there. All right? So here we go. Let's look at these numbers quickly. 1,000, 1,040, 2,040, 2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090, 5,000. Give yourselves a hand, guys. Well done. Okay, let's try it one more time. There's a little lackadaisical, so I need you to stand up, a little more energy. Come on. Here we go. 1,000, 1,040, 2,040, 2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090. You guys, it's not 5,000. Put up the answer. 4,090 plus 10 is not 5,000. Never has been, never will be, not even close. You guys are the worst. Have a seat. 5,000. 4,090. 5,000. Look, I throw that up there to start because I want to show you how easy it is to get off when you get into a rut. When you get into a routine, especially if there's a leader kind of pushing you or pulling you, we can real quickly get away from truth. Get away from what's right. Get away from what's real. And I am afraid in worship, in community, and in discipleship, we're over here screaming 5,000 all day long, and we're not even close. I'm nervous about that because, when I look through the Bible, when worship goes wrong, everything goes wrong. When worship goes right, a whole lot of stuff goes right. But in the Bible, when worship goes wrong, and there's plenty of places where worship goes wrong, plenty. The first picture of worship in Genesis 4, half of it goes wrong, disastrous results. Isaiah 1, worship goes wrong. God says, I hate your singing. Oof. Worship goes wrong, left, right, and center. And when it does, the scary thing for me as a worship pastor is the fear that what if I inadvertently lead people to worship unacceptably? Hebrews 12:28, we're receiving a kingdom that can't be shaken, so let's worship acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. God's not just looking for any old worship. He's looking for a certain kind. He wants it to be acceptable. We do not have time to go into what makes it acceptable. We don't have time to get into the nuances and the sophistication of all that stuff. I just want you to hear my heart as having traveled and led with a band and written and recorded and done some touring and led week in, week out at church at the same place for 17 years. I'm nervous, guys, that there's a bunch of people chanting 5,000 and we're not even close. I'm nervous. 10 years ago, my wife and I and my pastor buddy, we were all praying about what can we do to help raise up more leaders of worship, because I want people everywhere to worship God. It was in worship that I fell in love with God. I'm a pastor's kid. Okay, I grew up knowing that God was right. In worship, I'm 19 years old. I experienced that God was good. Worship changed everything for me. I remember the first time I lifted my hands, I felt like chains were coming off of me. I didn't know I was bound. Worship is where it went from God being right to God being good. And ever since then, it's been like, God, if you'll use me to help other people taste and see that you're good, not just think that you're right, but experience that you are real, experience that you're good and that you're powerful, I'm in. Ever since then, traveling, writing, leading, and growing myself, studying the Bible and going, what does the Bible actually say about this? Because I didn't grow up in a culture where like you lifted up a holy hand. If you lifted up a holy hand, you better ask a holy question, you know? Like we didn't do that in my church. But then I go through the Bible and I see it's everywhere. I mean, Robbie talked about Psalm 63 this morning. It's in verse 4. I'll praise you as long as I live. In your name I'll lift my hands. Psalm 28:2. Hear the voice of my supplication. I call to you and outstretched hands. 1 Timothy 2. Verse 8, I wish men everywhere would lift up holy hands in prayer. So just this one little sliver of a posture, it's all over the place. God is inviting us in worship to love him with all that we are, not just from the neck up. But for me growing up, worship was what you did from the neck up before you go to lunch. And we're just trying to say, what if like people could open themselves up to love God with all that they are? Here's why that's so catalytic, because when you open yourself up to love God, you also open yourself up to be loved by God. And that's what changed everything for me. When you just open, it's like when my little kids, like if they would get up on my leg and go, Dad, you know. I'm like, you want to hug me? Get ready, here it comes, you know. Like they're wanting to love me. I'm just going to totally envelop them in a much bigger love than their little 18-month-old love. This is what I think God's doing sometimes in worship when we open ourselves up to love on God. And so we travel all over the place, we lead, and then the pastors would call me often afterwards and say, hey, we've got great singers and great musicians, but do you know anyone that could come help us go deeper in worship and lead us in worship? Real quickly, I recommended everyone I knew that I trusted that was available, and we were out. And we've been doing some internships at our church, like in the summer with young worship leaders, like go through some psalms together, study some stuff together. That was fun. But real quickly, it was like, we're in trouble. Like there's huge need. People in all kinds of churches want, here's what's heartbreaking. People in all kinds of churches want what you guys have at the Village, but they don't have anyone to give it to them. They don't have anyone to lead them in biblical worship. They don't have anyone thinking through scripture to go with these songs. They don't have people doing that. And it's everywhere. And that breaks my heart. I want this to be going everywhere. So 10 years ago, my wife and I, and my pastor buddy, we start praying, what can we do? Internship is not going to cut it. We got to do more. So we basically stumbled our way from internship into discipleship, where we said, well, we don't know a lot, but we could at least invite people to come live in community with us. So my wife and I bought a house where we could have worship leaders live with us for a year at a time. So we invited the first year, 10 years ago, we had 4 worship leaders, a South African guy, a Canadian guy, and 2 guys from the U.S., move into our basement and do life. We prayed for a house where we could do this, and we prayed for a bus so that they could come on the road too. Because I feel like they don't need to see my highlight reel. They don't need to see my YouTube videos. They need to see what doesn't happen on YouTube. They need to see the real deal, not the highlight reel. And so they need to see my life, they see my marriage, they need to see my parenting. If I'm going to the hospital to pray for someone from church, they're coming with me. If I'm going on the road to do some cool event, they can come with me. But like, come on in. You need to see my real life because it is not what you think. So these guys lived with us 6 months at a time. We did that for a few years, and then we were fried. We had a baby during one of those. Like, I do not recommend having people, like 4 worship leaders, live in your house when you have a baby, all right? Don't do that. We were fried. 5 years ago, we shut it down, just like Leslie was talking about, and we took a year off. Shut it down. Moved to this tiny little beach town. We rented out our house. We lived out of savings. We treaded water financially, just barely kept our heads above water. But we were desperately in need of restoration. And we also needed empowerment. We needed tools. Like we have the heart and the passion to make disciples. We just don't have the tools. Like we don't know how, we've got a house. Okay, come live with us. We don't really know what we're doing, but it's better than nothing, you know? And so we moved away for a year so that we could get empowered and get some tools and basically get some skeleton to hold up all the organs and the passion and the heart and the guts. Since then, we've come back to Atlanta. We've invited team to come with us, to join us. And I feel kind of like that story in Luke 5, if you remember, where Jesus starts his relationship with Simon Peter and he steps into his boat and says, go out a little ways into the water. And then Jesus teaches, right, all the people. And then when he's done teaching, Jesus tells Simon Peter, now row out into the deeper water. and let down your nets. Y'all remember this story? Pretty awesome story. I think it's the best illustration of discipleship and of training, and it's an incredible illustration of community, because what happens is Jesus gets into his boat, just like he did for all of us. He says, go out into the shallow water, just like he did for all of us. We gradually start journeying with Jesus. We just keep saying yes. He keeps taking us into amazing things. And then he says, go out into the deep water, let down your nets. Now, this is where Simon has a choice. I mean, he's had a choice all the way, but now Simon knows better. Because Simon Peter is a fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter. Okay, fishermen fish at night in shallow water. Simon Peter knows better than Jesus. It's the daytime, and Jesus wants to go into the deeps. Simon Peter says, but I will do as you say. This one concession changed history. This one submission changed his life. It changed all of ours. They go into the deeper water. You remember what happens. They let down their nets. What happens? They catch so many fish, the nets start breaking and the boats start sinking. Okay, so they've caught so many fish. Simon Peter's out there with Jesus now. His nets are pulling his boat into the water, underwater. And so he calls James and John, his friends, other fishermen, to come help him. So they come alongside of him. And now you see not just this one guy on a mission to catch fish. You see a family coming together around a mission. And God's doing something in Simon Peter's boat. It's too big for Simon Peter to contain. And so he brings people around him to help him carry it, help him steward it, and rejoice in it too. That's exactly how we feel in Atlanta. We feel like for years and years, we were just casting our nets, raising up a couple leaders at a time, 4 this year, 4 the next year, 2 one year. Then 3 years ago, we had just 1 girl live with this. We're kind of fishing with a line, you know. But after that story, Jesus changes Simon's name later. Jesus tells Simon, no longer are you going to be catching fish. You're going to be a fisher of men. I think it's such an incredible story because you need to go deep before you let down the nets. Like in your own life, like when it comes to discipleship, when it comes to what Charlie was just talking about, which is really great, it's important that you journey with Jesus for a while before you start reproducing. Otherwise, you're multiplying dysfunction. You don't give a 12-year-old car keys. Are y'all with me? So it gets messy when kids have kids. 13-year-olds can have kids. They shouldn't have kids. It's not usually good for the kid or for the mom. So there are stages of our growth that we need to go through. But what I want you to hear is that our growth isn't the end goal. That's not the point. We go deep in God and deep in the Word, deeper in worship, not just so that we can enjoy how deep we are and how great the view is out there, so that we can let down the nets. That's why Jesus wants to take us deeper. And this is where I think we've really dropped the ball, not just in worship culture, but in general in culture. Here's what we've done. We've failed to recognize what's so obvious in the rest of life, that growth leads to reproduction. Growth leads to reproduction. When we, a couple years ago, I was going into the bank. I told you I live outside of Atlanta. Little small town, sleepy town. We don't have like celebrities in my town. But I was walking into the bank, and as I walked into the bank, I saw one of the biggest humans I've ever seen in my life right in front of me. And I mean, he literally ducks to come in the door. And once we get inside, he turns around and I see who it is. This is who it was. All right, so Shaq has just bought a house near where we live. Why? I have no idea. He had this gigantic pickup truck, like blinged out. We were like, okay, that's not some white boy's truck. That is a real deal big boy truck right there. And so it was so fun to see him and to see everyone in the bank like freak out about how big this guy is. He's 7'1", right? But it made me think about the tallest guy that we have record of. His name was Robert Wadlow. Check this guy out. Oh, actually, I have a picture first for context of Shaq with Kevin Hart. Look at that. I just think that's hilarious. Okay, Shaq, 7'1". Now, look at Robert Wadlow. He's 8 feet 11 inches. The tallest man that we know of on record to have lived. His dad, if you look at the next picture, was 6'1". Here's my height, okay? 8'11", 439 pounds, size 39 shoe. What happened was he had this growth hormone that went out of control. It kept secreting these growth hormones, and by the time he was 12, he was on leg braces. He died at 22 because your body's not supposed to keep growing like that. That means something's wrong. Okay, and the doctor said at the time he died, there was no indication that his growth was going to slow down anytime soon. Okay, I throw this image up there because this is growth gone wild. This is what happens, and for me, I'll probably never get invited back. That's okay. This is what a lot of us think our spiritual life is supposed to look like. This is what a lot of us think our churches are supposed to look like. But this is unnatural. We grow, and then we reproduce. We grow up, and then we give away. This is what's happened in my own life. And guys, loving relationships reproduce. If they don't, that's called infertility. And it's heartbreaking in the natural. It's heartbreaking biologically when, if you've walked through infertility with someone, I hate it. There are people heavy on my heart today that I'm still praying for that we'll see a miracle. We've seen so many wombs opened up. We've seen miracle after miracle after miracle in our own worship school. But there are some that we haven't seen that yet, and it kills me. But guys, what is heartbreaking in the natural is status quo in the spiritual. We're not reproducing, and we don't even expect to, because we think it's still about us growing deeper. And people who have been in churches for 20 years will walk away and say, I'm just not really being fed anymore. What makes you think this is about you being fed? You're supposed to be feeding. You're supposed to be raising people up. You just keep wanting to row deeper and deeper into God? Why? It's so that you can let down the nets and bring other people into what God's doing through your life, so that they can tap into what God wants to do through theirs. But when we make it all about our growth and we forget reproduction, man, we just miss so much. So we invited these other boats, these other families, people that we'd poured into and loved on and kind of disciple, to come join us in Atlanta. We turned our little worship school that was just called like Aaron Key's Worship School into 10,000 Fathers Worship School. And it's coming out of 1 Corinthians 4 where Paul says to the Corinthians, remember how dynamic and charismatic their church services were. Okay, you've read 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, right? Paul says to the Corinthians, even if you had 10,000 teachers, you don't have many fathers. You don't have what you need. So I've become a father to you, so imitate me as I imitate Christ. So Paul says, even if you had 10,000 teachers, and guys, through podcasts, through books, through multi-site, we've got more teaching options than ever. In my pocket, I have some of the best teachers in the world I can listen to while I drive to the airport this afternoon. But we're fooling ourselves if we think information is all that we need. We're kidding ourselves if we mistake education for transformation. Discipleship is not just information. Discipleship is imitation, where you invite someone into your real life to see it up close. And this is the difference between a teacher and a father. So we've called our ministry 10,000 Fathers because we want to raise up 10,000 fathers and mothers of worship who can raise up countless thousands others. I mean, think about how limited is your season on the stage. Think about an athlete. How limited is an athlete's capacity to be at the top level of the NBA? 15 years? 16, 20? Oh, I don't know. How much longer, though, could that athlete, if they learn how to give it away, lead leaders and raise up more people to go further? 3 times that? 4 times that? But what happens is if it's still about us and our growth, then we don't actually want anyone else to get very good. We would never, I'm sure I'm the only one that I've been gone, and I'm like, I hope it goes well, but not too well. We can be like Saul. Like, Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. And it drives him crazy. His insecurity, he doesn't have an identity. He's riddled with envy. He spends the rest of his life trying to kill God's anointed. Y'all, the song I'm dying to hear is that Aaron has done such and such, but his disciples have gone so much further. Saul should have been the first person championing David. How much further could David's kingdom have gone if it hadn't been thrown spears at for its first 10 years? His anointing, and how different Saul was than Jesus, who said, you're going to do the things that I've done. Not only that, you're going to do greater things than I've done. And guys, they did. The greatest man that ever lived wanted to be surpassed and was. This is crazy. If you go through the book of Acts, cover the names of the people doing the miracles, you'll think it's Jesus. Jesus has ascended. He's gone off the scene, but they're doing the same stuff. And even, if you will, greater things. Jesus' shadow never healed anybody. Theirs did. His handkerchief never healed anybody. Theirs did. He didn't go to India. Jesus didn't go to China. They did. Are y'all with me? He lived in such a way, he brought community around him. He gave everything he had to them. And they went and they got what he carried. And they took it further than he ever needed to take it. Jesus made disciples. We make excuses. Let me show you one. I think I'm probably over time, aren't I? Let me show you one. Yeah, dadgum. Let me show you just one more tool, and we can be done here. The things in our community now that we want to commit to and that we want to raise people up in. We want to be a community of character and competency. So I want to show you just a quick matrix. First it was math, now it's a matrix. You guys are never, you're going to get this guy out of here. But let me just show you real quickly what, for us, discipleship looks like in our community. Because now we're not just this big family on mission. There's about 60 of us now, all doing family together. We have put rocks in the river on our calendar that everything else flows around. I know how hard community is to actually live out. And I know how hard family is to actually work through. I've got a big family myself. We're trying to lead this big spiritual family on mission. I know that it's hard, but guys, it's the easiest thing to understand. It's the hardest thing to prioritize. Just time together. But a few of our rocks in the river are Tuesday night, we do family dinner. It rotates. This is 60 people descending on someone's poor house, and we're having dinner together. Then once a month, the guys stay after. Accountability. Once a month, the girls stay after. Accountability. Once a month, it's oriented around our kids. Then once a month, it's oriented around the neighbors. Whatever neighborhood we're in, just loving the neighbors. So this is a rock in the river for us. We're doing this. Thursday morning, we do prayer, and we do worship together as a community. Monthly. Or regularly, not quite monthly, we do fasting and feasting together, where we all seek the Lord together through fasting, and then we break our fast and we party together and we feast. There are a few rocks that you need to set in the river. Everything else has to flow around these things. Otherwise, you'll just never actually make time for family and for community, especially if you're wired like Leslie or me. But as a community, we're trying to devote ourselves to character and competency, and we're trying to help other people step into their fullest character and competency. And here's why. Okay, we can end with this. We're over time. Leaders who are high in character but low in competency, I'll show you, they're limited in the good that's going to be coming through their life. Okay, they're high in character, so good walk with God. Healthy marriage, not perfect people, but they're aware, they're working through it. Now, their skill, they haven't really worked it out. They're not very good yet at anything. Okay, they're probably not going to be inspiring a bunch of people to come around them and get what they've got, because they've got great character, but they haven't really worked through competency. Guys, it's helpful to recognize the difference between talent and skill. Talent is what God gave you. That's a mystery, it's a gift. Skill is not a mystery, and skill is not a gift. Skill is hard work, and hours and hours and hours. Okay, so your competency is your ability. Your character is your integrity. Your competency is like your reliability. Can you actually deliver? Have you learned the parts? Can you hit the notes? Can you write the song or whatever? Can you communicate? Your character is your credibility. What gives you the gravitas behind your leadership to begin with. Okay, so if all we are is high in character and low in competency, we're limited in good. If we are simply high in competency and low in character, we are unlimited in the harm that we're going to cause. And guys, I wish it was hard for me to think of examples of people who had more competency than I'll ever have, bigger stages than I'll ever see, bigger platform than I'll ever know, but they didn't have the character to stand up underneath it, and they are gone, and they have taken a lot of people with them. The dominoes just keep on falling. Robbie mentioned David and Absalom. Study that story, because you'll see just a few little choices in one generation become a bloody battle, killing thousands of people in the next generation. When competency exceeds character. If you're low in character and low in competency, I guess you're just irrelevant. But listen, it would be better for you to be there than there. If you're not going to work on your self-awareness, you're not going to work on emotional health, you're not going to actually work on addressing your stuff, but you're going to keep working out your scales, I would rather you stop working out your scales. Obviously, the kind of leaders that we want to be, the kind of leaders that we're trying to train, we train people over 18 months of our program through discipleship, first 6 months character, then competency, and then community and commissioning. We've got to be these kind of leaders who are high in character, high in competency, because then we can become unlimited in the good that God's going to release through our lives. So I throw this out as a tool, as an assessment for you. Where are you in terms of your character? Be honest. Then where are you in terms of your competency? Have you been pushing yourself, or have you been coasting? You know, you only coast downhill. You can't coast uphill. So how are you? And a lot of times, man, in church, we can kind of slack in pushing ourselves. Because it's for God. Who cares how good it is? It's for the King. You better be good. You need to work this out. We can do what we do better. We should. So, but let's not neglect character as we work out competency. What we need is to be personally growing in our character and competence, and then we can invite people into our journey in character and competency. And it's so important that we model this ourselves, because you do not reproduce what you want. You reproduce who you are. And in terms of community, in terms of discipleship, guys, there's 130 of you here. What if each of you were pushing into character and competency for the next year? And you named one area in your character that I want this to look more like Christ next year at this time. And one area in your competency where you're like, I want to be more faithful with my talents this time next year. And you begin growing in that. That's called discipleship. And as you do that, and then you begin to bring other people along with you, that changes things. Songs are great, but songs aren't going to last. Disciples will. In John 15, Jesus said, I've appointed you to bear much fruit, and it's fruit that lasts. Jesus appointed us to bear much fruit, and fruit that lasts. We're over time. I wanted to end with something, but I don't think I'm going to have time to. Jeff, I can shut it down. All right. Okay. So at our church, when we first started this, we had this one main mega church, mothership, right? And we're landlocked, so we couldn't build a bigger room, and we're doing 4 services, and they're all full, and it's thousands of people, and we're like, what do we do? So there's nothing we could do. So we basically started planting churches all around us. And Grace is now, our first one was down in the city in Midtown. The worship guys there have really blown up on the scene. They're called House Fires, and they've like taken off. It's awesome. Half of them have come through our school. The worship leaders at all the other worship campuses in our church have come from our worship school. And these are all leaders that we all do some rhythm of life together where we're devoted to growing in our character. We're devoted to growing in our competency, and we're devoted to actually bringing other people into theirs as well. So at a local level, it's shaping our whole culture at church. At a global level, we have worship leaders now from almost every continent who are coming in, whether they're coming into Atlanta once every 6 months for worship school, or they're jumping in online, and we've started a school in Europe. We've got school in Denmark. We've got leaders making disciples everywhere. And this is all we want to see. We just want to see leaders making disciples everywhere. Here's the last thing I want to say. When Jesus started his discipleship, it's in Mark 3:14. You can read about it. I'll just read it to you. It says, Jesus appointed 12 so that they might be with him, and then he might send them out to preach, to heal the sick, and to cast out demons. The phrase that I want you to hear is, he appointed 12 that he wanted to be with him, to be with him. Okay, he calls these 12. If you fast forward all of his ministry, his ascension, all of that, which I don't really recommend, but if you did, and you went to Acts 4, Jesus is gone, they're doing the stuff. Peter and John are preaching so boldly. You remember the story in Acts 4 where the wall starts shaking, the Holy Spirit does all this cool stuff. It's cool. So listen to what it says in Acts 4:13. It says this. When the people saw the courage of Peter and John, they realized they were unschooled, ordinary men. They were astonished. And they took note that these men had, guess what? Been with Jesus. They'd been with Jesus. We moved 17 years ago because we wanted what this man had. He was a spiritual father to us and to a bunch of leaders around us. Buddy, our pastor, our founding pastor, he passed away 6 months ago. And he had an aortic aneurysm. It was a really rough season for the last 9 months at our church, actually. And what was a kairos, it was like a epiphany to me, was planning his funeral with his wife and family 6 months ago, and they wanted song after song that I'd written. And Buddy was not like a musical, he wasn't like an expressive, he wasn't an emotional guy. He was a pragmatist, he's a thinker. And so he's an apostle. He's on mission all the time. And it wasn't until planning his funeral that I realized all this time I thought I was ministering with Buddy, I was ministering to him. And it breaks my heart that I didn't realize that sooner. So I throw that out to you guys because Jesus called 12 so that he might be with him. Someone has called you that you would be here. Someone wants you on their team. You guys have come to rally around someone. That's a big deal. Don't neglect the person leading you when you think about who needs to be with you. They might need your support as much as the next generation. Don't neglect that. And lastly, begin to ask God, who might you call to be with you? To begin to grow this thing and to grow it out. You don't have to be perfect. The world doesn't need perfect examples, just living examples. You don't have to be perfect, but you can begin pushing yourself in character, pushing yourself in competency, doing it in a way that supports who's called you to be with them, and then inviting other people to join you in that journey. If there's any way that we in Atlanta at 10,000 Fathers, we could support you in that, we would be so delighted and so honored to do that. I love your church. I love Matt and Lauren, and getting to know Bleeker and Jeff Bleeker for the last few years, and Jeff even the last couple months has been a treat for me. And so I'm so thankful for what you guys are doing as a church. I just know there's a whole bunch more churches that need what you have. And adding campuses is one thing. Multiplying leaders is another. And I'm begging that you guys will become not just, already with A29, it's happening. You're planting churches everywhere. What if a bunch of the worship leaders for those churches are sitting in this room? Or people that you know, that you just need to begin inviting into a life of invitation. Is that okay? All right, let me pray. Thanks, Lord, for giving us this better example of living for something that's bigger than our ephemeral little season of life. We're a passing shadow, Psalm says. So would you empower us to be honest about our character, embolden us to be courageous in growing in our competency, help us to be fearless, that our identity isn't based on how well we perform. Our identity is based on you, what you've called us, what you've done for us. And would you, I'm asking that you would make the village a multiplying culture where leaders are coming in and going out. They're coming in one way and going out another to plant churches, to go change cities where more people come in one way and go out another. Would you just bless these guys, bless these men, bless these women, bless Matt and Lauren as they lead. We just pray for the network of churches. We pray for all that you're doing. We just recognize, God, in you is life. You're the only hope for our country, and we need you bad. You're the only one who can save. Bullets, bombs, blood, it's not going to do it. Faith, hope, and love. You've shown us a better way. And we believe that you are the King who reigns over presidents. You're the Lord who reigns over nations. And your kingdom is an unshakable kingdom. So will you help us as we even lead people in worship to continue to lift their eyes, to not lose hope, and to not pretend like the world around us isn't in big need of a Savior. We recognize our need. We recognize the brokenness in our world. We don't just turn away from it to turn towards you. We turn towards you and then we run into it. Help us be your hands. Help us be your feet. Help us be leaders of character and competency, committed to doing it in family. In Jesus' name, amen.